Ladies and gentlemen, I've learned something about life that I wish somebody had sat me down and told me when I was younger. Not when I had already messed up. Not when I had already lost time. I mean, before the mistakes, before the wasted years, before the nights I sat there wondering why things weren't changing. I wish somebody had told me this one thing. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. Now, I know that sounds backwards, because most of us grow up thinking discipline is somebody taking something from us. You get disciplined at school, you lose recess. You get disciplined at home, you lose TV. You get disciplined at work, you lose opportunities. So we grow up with this idea that discipline hurts, that discipline restricts, that discipline is the enemy of happiness. But I'm standing here today to tell you the exact opposite is true. Discipline is the thing that gives you your life back. Discipline is the tool that takes you from where you are to where you keep dreaming about going. You see, people think success is about talent. They think it's about luck. They think it's about connections. They think it's about timing. But if you really study anybody who has built something lasting, anybody who has turned nothing into something, anybody who has changed their situation in a permanent way, you will find one common thread. And it ain't talent. It ain't money. It ain't opportunity. It is discipline. The ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Let me tell you something real. Motivation will lie to you. Motivation is emotional. Some days you wake up fired up, ready to conquer the world. You got your music playing, you got your vision clear, you feel unstoppable. But then there are other days. Days when the alarm clock rings and you feel heavy, days when doubt creeps in, days when your energy is low and your confidence is quiet. If your life depends on motivation, your life will be inconsistent. But if your life depends on discipline, your progress becomes inevitable. Discipline is waking up when you don't want to wake up. Discipline is doing the work when nobody is watching. Discipline is saying no to things that feel good now, so you can say yes to things that matter later. And let me tell you something about later. Later always comes, whether you prepared or not, whether you sacrificed or not, whether you disciplined yourself or not. Later is coming, and when it arrives, it will either reward you or expose you. I had to learn that the hard way. There was a time in my life when I had big dreams but small habits. I wanted success, but I didn't yet understand structure. I wanted change, but I hadn't committed to consistency. And I kept wondering why nothing moved, why nothing shifted, why life felt stuck. But life wasn't stuck. I was. Because dreams without discipline are just wishes. And wishes don't build anything. You see, discipline is the bridge between where you stand and where you want to go. And the reason most people never cross that bridge is because it's uncomfortable. It requires sacrifice. It requires honesty. It requires you to look at yourself and admit that the problem ain't always the world. Sometimes the problem is your habits. Sometimes the problem is your excuses. Sometimes the problem is the comfort you refuse to leave. Now, I know people don't like hearing that. We live in a time where everybody wants encouragement, but nobody wants correction. Everybody wants results, but nobody wants routine. Everybody wants the stage, but nobody wants the practice. But I'm telling you, the life you want sits on the other side of disciplined behavior. And the moment you force yourself to align your actions with your goals, everything starts to change. Discipline is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post pictures. It doesn't brag. Discipline is quiet. It is repetitive. It is daily. It is boring sometimes. But inside that boring repetition, miracles are happening. Because every day you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. Every day you do what you said you would do, you strengthen your identity. You stop seeing yourself as somebody who tries, and you start seeing yourself as somebody who follows through. And once that identity shifts, your life shifts. Because you no longer negotiate with your excuses. You no longer debate with your comfort. You no longer wait for permission. You act. You move. You execute. Not because you feel amazing, but because you decided you will no longer let feelings control your future. You see, forcing yourself to discipline your life is not about being harsh. It's about being committed. It's about saying, I love myself enough to demand more from myself. I respect my future enough to change my present. I believe in my potential enough to stop sabotaging it. That is discipline. It is self-respect in action. There is a dangerous lie people believe that discipline is only for extreme people, athletes, soldiers, high performers. But that's not true. Discipline is for anybody who wants control of their life. Because without discipline, your life is controlled by impulse, by mood, by distraction, by whatever feels easiest in the moment. And the easiest choice rarely leads to the best life. Think about it. Every improvement in your life has come from some form of discipline. Health requires disciplined eating and movement. Finances require disciplined spending and saving. Relationships require disciplined communication and patience. Growth requires disciplined learning and effort. There is no area of life that improves by accident. Everything responds to consistent behavior. But here's the truth. Most people don't want to face discipline. Hurts at first. It feels restrictive. It feels unfair. It feels like you're denying yourself. Because you are. You are denying the old version of you that kept you stuck. You are denying the patterns that kept you small. You are denying the habits that wasted your time. And that old version will fight back. It will whisper. It will justify. It will negotiate. It will say, just this once. And if you listen, it will take your future with it. So you have to decide, not once, but daily. You have to decide that you are no longer available for the life you used to tolerate. You have to decide that comfort is no longer your leader. You have to decide that your standards are rising and your discipline is rising with them. I want you to understand something powerful. Discipline is easier than regret. It doesn't feel that way in the moment, but over time it becomes true. Because discipline costs effort now, regret costs pain later. Discipline asks you to stretch, regret forces you to relive. Discipline builds pride, regret builds doubt. And if you look at people who are deeply fulfilled, they are not people who avoided effort. They are people who embrace discipline long enough for it to transform their life. There's another thing about discipline nobody talks about. It simplifies your decisions. When you are undisciplined, everything is a debate. Should I do it? Should I not? Maybe later. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe when I feel ready. But when you are disciplined, the decision is already made. You don't ask if you should do what aligns with your goals, you do it. Because that's who you are now. That's your standard. That's your identity. And identity is everything. Because once you see yourself as disciplined, you protect that identity. You don't break promises to yourself easily. You don't abandon routines casually. You don't return to habits that contradict who you've become. And that is when discipline stops feeling forced and starts feeling natural. I'm not telling you this as theory. I'm telling you this as lived experience. I've had seasons in my life where discipline carried me when motivation disappeared. Times when structure saved me from chaos. Times when consistency rescued me from my own doubt. And every time I committed to disciplined action, my life elevated. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, permanently, respectably. You know what discipline also does? It builds confidence you can't fake. Because real confidence does not come from talk. It comes from proof. When you repeatedly do hard things, you collect evidence about yourself. Evidence that you are capable. Evidence that you are reliable. Evidence that you can endure discomfort and still move forward. And that evidence changes how you walk, how you speak, how you decide. You no longer hope you can, you know you can. That is why forcing yourself to discipline your life is not cruelty. It is compassion. It is the deepest form of self-care. Because you are no longer abandoning your future self. You are supporting them. You are investing in them. You are saying, I may struggle today, but I refuse to suffer tomorrow. Let me tell you something else. Discipline does not remove joy. It protects it. Because the joy that comes from earned progress, from meaningful growth, from watching yourself evolve, that joy is deeper than any temporary pleasure. Anybody can enjoy comfort. But not everybody experiences the satisfaction of becoming who they promised themselves they would be. So when you feel resistance, when you feel that internal pushback, understand that you are standing at the doorway of change. And change always asks for discipline. Always. There is no transformation without repeated, intentional behavior. None. And the sooner you accept that, the faster your life moves forward. You don't need to be perfect. Discipline is not perfection. Discipline is persistence. It is returning to the path after you drift. It is recommitting after you slip. It is continuing after you fail. Because failure is not the opposite of discipline, quitting is. And as long as you return, you are still disciplined. I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself 1 year from now if you truly disciplined your daily actions. Same environment, same resources, same starting point. But disciplined behavior, disciplined mornings, disciplined focus, disciplined priorities, disciplined habits, your life would not look the same. It couldn't. Because consistent behavior always compounds. Always. That's the power people underestimate. Small disciplined actions repeated daily reshape entire lives. Not dramatically, not instantly, but undeniably. And one day you wake up and realize, I'm not who I used to be. My standards changed. My results changed. My confidence changed. My direction changed. And all of it started with forcing myself to do what I once avoided. You don't wait for discipline. You create it. You choose it. You practice it. And at first it feels forced. It feels unnatural. It feels heavy. But over time it becomes strength. It becomes ease. It becomes identity. And eventually it becomes freedom. I stand before you as someone who understands struggle, inconsistency, doubt, fear, but also understands what happens when a person decides enough is enough. When they decide they are tired of their own excuses. When they decide they will no longer negotiate with comfort. When they decide they will discipline their life whether they feel ready or not. And that is the moment everything changes. Not outside first. Inside. Because discipline reshapes the person. And the reshaped person reshapes their life. So I want to leave you with this truth. You are not stuck because you lack potential. You are stuck where discipline has not yet been applied. And the moment you apply it consistently, patiently, relentlessly, movement begins. Growth begins. Change begins. Force yourself to discipline your life. Not because you are weak, but because you are capable of more than you have allowed. Not because you lack worth, but because you deserve the results of your own highest effort. Not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And one day, when your life reflects the standards you finally chose, you will thank yourself for every moment you refused to quit on your own discipline. That's how you take your life back. That's how you honor your potential. That's how you become who you were meant to be. I'm telling you, discipline will change everything. If there is one thing I want echoing in your mind long after these words fade, it is this. Discipline is not something outside of you that you chase. It is something inside of you that you choose. It is not reserved for extraordinary people, and it is not granted by circumstance. It is built moment by moment, decision by decision, in the quiet spaces where nobody else is watching and no applause is waiting. And in those unseen moments, your life is being shaped. Because life does not transform in the spotlight. It transforms in the routine. It transforms in the mornings you rise when comfort says stay. It transforms in the evenings you continue when fatigue says stop. It transforms in the repeated refusal to betray your own standards. And over time, that refusal becomes strength. That strength becomes identity. And that identity becomes destiny. You must understand something deeply. The person you become is the direct result of the disciplines you accept. Not the dreams you imagine. Not the plans you announce. Not the intentions you carry. It is the disciplines you live. Because what you repeatedly do is who you repeatedly are. And who you repeatedly are determines what you repeatedly receive. There is no separation between your habits and your outcomes. They are one continuous line stretching from choice to consequence. Many people spend their lives waiting for change to feel natural. Waiting for effort to feel easy. Waiting for discipline to feel comfortable. But the truth is, discipline often begins exactly where comfort ends. It asks you to move before you feel ready. It asks you to act before you feel confident. It asks you to commit before you feel certain. And in doing so, it stretches you beyond the boundaries of who you used to be. That stretch is not punishment. That stretch is expansion. That stretch is growth unfolding. So if you feel resistance, do not misinterpret it as a sign to stop. Resistance is often proof you are crossing from the familiar into the possible. Every time you choose discipline over ease, you redraw the map of your own character. You weaken the grip of old patterns. You loosen the hold of old limitations. And slowly, steadily, you construct a new version of yourself, one decision stronger, one habit steadier, one action more aligned than before. There is profound dignity in that process, because discipline is not about harshness. It is about alignment. It is about bringing your daily behavior into agreement with your deepest values. It is about ensuring that the life you say you want is supported by the life you actually live. And when those two finally match, when intention and action stand side by side, something powerful happens. You stop feeling divided. You stop feeling scattered. You stop feeling like your future is uncertain. You begin to feel congruent, directed, certain, whole. And that wholeness creates peace. Not the fragile peace of avoidance, but the grounded peace of effort honestly applied. The peace that comes from knowing you are not abandoning yourself anymore. The peace that comes from knowing you are meeting your own potential with equal commitment. The peace that comes from watching yourself become reliable in your own eyes. Because nothing stabilizes the human spirit like self-trust. And self-trust is born from discipline kept. Consider how different life becomes when you trust yourself. Decisions become clearer because you know you will follow through. Opportunities become less intimidating because you know you will prepare. Challenges become less frightening because you know you will persist. Even failure becomes less threatening because you know you will return. That confidence does not come from luck. It comes from evidence, the accumulated proof of disciplined action across time. So the conclusion of all this is not simply that discipline improves your life. It is that discipline redefines your relationship with yourself. It turns you from someone who hopes into someone who acts, from someone who intends into someone who executes, from someone who doubts into someone who demonstrates. And that internal shift is the foundation upon which every external achievement stands. You must also remember that discipline is not measured in dramatic moments. It is measured in consistency, in the repetition of small, correct actions long after novelty fades. Because greatness is rarely the result of one extraordinary effort. It is the result of ordinary effort repeated without surrender. Day after day, choice after choice, until what once required force becomes what you naturally do. And when that happens, discipline is no longer something you impose on yourself. It becomes something that expresses you. Your standards speak through your behavior. Your priorities show through your schedule. Your values appear in your routines. And anyone observing your life can see the architecture of discipline holding it upright. Not rigidly, but reliably. This is why forcing yourself to discipline your life is ultimately an act of liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of mood. It frees you from the volatility of motivation. It frees you from the cycle of starting and stopping, hoping and quitting, intending and abandoning. It gives you steadiness. And steadiness, applied long enough, becomes progress you cannot easily reverse. There will still be hard days. Discipline does not erase difficulty, but it changes your response to difficulty. Instead of collapsing, you continue. Instead of escaping, you engage. Instead of postponing, you proceed. And that shift, that refusal to disengage, is the difference between lives that stagnate and lives that evolve. You may wonder whether such persistence is worth the effort, whether the cost of daily discipline is too high. But compare it honestly to the cost of its absence, the frustration of unrealized potential, the regret of abandoned goals, the doubt born from repeated inconsistency. Discipline asks for effort. Undisciplined living asks for disappointment. And over the long arc of a lifetime, one cost builds you while the other diminishes you. So the invitation here is not merely to work harder. It is to live more deliberately, to let each day carry the imprint of conscious choice rather than passive drift, to ensure that your actions, however small, are oriented toward the person you intend to become. Because identity is sculpted by repetition, and repetition is governed by discipline. Imagine the quiet pride of looking back and seeing years shaped by intention. Habits strengthened, capacities expanded, promises kept. Not perfection, but persistence. Not ease, but endurance. Not sudden transformation, but steady elevation. That is the legacy of disciplined living, a life that gradually rises to meet the height of its own potential. And understand this: discipline is never too late to begin. No matter how long patterns have existed, they can be altered. No matter how many attempts have faltered, another can succeed, because discipline does not require a perfect past. It requires a committed present. And the moment you begin again, sincerely, consistently, you interrupt the trajectory of yesterday and initiate the possibility of tomorrow. Therefore, let this be the closing truth you carry forward. Your life will move in the direction of your disciplined actions. Not your wishes, not your fears, not your excuses, your disciplined actions. They are the steering force. They are the shaping force. They are the deciding force. And they are entirely within your reach, one choice at a time. Force yourself, not with anger, but with resolve. Not with shame, but with belief. Not with rigidity, but with purpose. Force yourself because you recognize that comfort has kept you smaller than your capacity. Force yourself because you see that consistency is the path to freedom. Force yourself because you understand that the person you want to be is waiting on the other side of repeated, disciplined living. And when you cross that distance, step by disciplined step, you will discover something extraordinary. The life you once thought required motivation, luck, or perfect conditions was always available through structure, persistence, and choice. You will see that discipline did not confine you. It revealed you. It did not restrict you. It refined you. It did not burden you. It built you. That realization is the true conclusion. Discipline is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning of it. Because the most powerful freedom a human being can possess is self-mastery, the ability to direct one's own actions in alignment with one's highest values regardless of circumstance or feeling. And self-mastery is simply discipline sustained. So walk forward from here knowing that every disciplined decision is an investment in the person you are becoming. Every consistent action is a brick in the structure of your future. Every moment you choose effort over ease, purpose over impulse, growth over comfort, you are writing a life that reflects intention rather than accident. And one day, standing in the reality those choices created, you will understand that the force you applied was never against yourself. It was for yourself, for your growth, your dignity, your potential fulfilled. That is the quiet victory of disciplined living. That is the lasting reward. That is the life you earn when you decide to discipline your life and refuse to turn back.